So let me tell you my crypto investments, my Bitcoin investment story, because it highlights it the best. Because I just recently went through the maths of this and I kind of shocked myself. So I first heard about Bitcoin during the European crisis in 2012. I realized that this was a solution to a lot of the global financial system. And I wrote the first macro strategy piece on Bitcoin probably ever published in Global Macro Investor in 2013. And it was driven by a friend of mine, Emil Woods, who's is very well known in the space, and Chad Cascarello, who are Global Macro Investor subscribers, saying, listen, you need to look at Bitcoin. So I looked at it. They happened to have started an exchange called ItBit, which is now Paxos, and I ended up buying Bitcoin. And I stuck a decent size in because my analysis was, it's at $200 now. If I back out the analysis versus the stock to flow of gold, this is worth $1 million with the gold at these current prices. Therefore, it's underpriced. I hadn't figured out anything else about network effects, but I kind of understood that this was potentially important. And I assumed that it would go to zero. So my downside was 200. My upside was 999,000, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, I assume that I am a total idiot, which I try and assume most of the time. And therefore, I'm 90% wrong. So if the upside is 100,000 and it's $200, it's the best risk reward any of us will ever come across in our entire lives, and maybe one of the best risk rewards of all time.
In recent months, the economic growth in cryptocurrencies has been underwhelming. In a recent interview, the macro guru Raoul Pal talked about how to speed up economic growth. Raoul believes that the market has experienced the sting of tightening before. Because of this, it seems likely that the recession will end. Hello and welcome to Money Talks. In today's video, Raoul Pal talks about his origin story, building his brand, investor psychology in the best and worst trade of Raoul's career. Raoul also explains the importance of having a longer time horizon in Bitcoin investment and why it's crucial to trust your gut as an investor or a trader. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the post notifications. So without wasting any time, let's dive right into the video.
So I took that bet, right? Macro thesis, did the work, said this is probably a 10-year play, and I'm going to hold it. So first thing that happens, I put the position on, it goes up 100%. It goes up 100% a month and 500% in the next 4 months. I'm like, holy shit. I don't sell any because I've got a long-term thesis and it's fresh in my mind. It then falls 85%, but luckily back to my entry level. So it gets back to 200. I don't do anything because I had a long-term thesis. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then 2017, it starts coming to life again. And it's starting to scream higher. And now it's at 2,000 or 2,200. And I'm like, okay, I'm up 10x, which is good. My thesis obviously was a lot more. But I'd forgotten that because now the forking wars had started. And I suddenly thought, is this existential? Is this the S-curve moment where it fails? So I sold it. It went up another 10x to 20,000. I didn't worry about that because I'd made 10x and it was okay. It was a good trade. And I was worried that it wasn't going to be able to play out my thesis because of these forking wars. And then it fell 85%. I wasn't in it. And eventually I got in April 2020. And I can't remember what my average was. Call it 6,800 or something. And then I'm still long, and then rotated into ETH and did other stuff. But anyway, so great trade, one of the best trade of my life. I went back and looked at if I just kept my initial investment at $200, I would have done. I can't remember the number, 5 times better. Even though the size that I added in March 2020 was massively larger than the first size
Interesting.
It still didn't work. I'm like, huh. And then I thought, okay, if I'd actually followed my thesis, which is when it gets very oversold and it gets to that kind of logarithmic, the bottom, the 2 standard deviations oversold of a logarithmic channel or whatever, if I'd actually just doubled my position every time, but not doubled it, sorry, just added the same amount as my initial seed investment, I'd have done like 25x. I'm like, okay. So what I thought was a great trade was actually a terrible trade because I didn't trade my plan and I didn't think about what I was trying to achieve. So that's leads into the question about, okay, the markets sell off now. I'm immensely comfortable because I see the network adoption. I've got even more models to understand how this space works. I see how broad and deep the talent, the adoption, the kind of conversations that Greg and I have with people all the time, it's like seeing the future. So therefore, the volatility now, I've been adding as fast as I can, scraping the sofa for coins or anything to put more money in.
The crypto market endured the bear condition for months. The economic growth remained negative throughout the past couple of months. Finally, Raoul Pal, considered the macro guru, has explained how the markets can get the push they need. Raoul Pal is an ex-executive of Goldman Sachs. He recently got interviewed on the Real Vision YouTube channel about the economic growth of cryptocurrencies. He said that the Fed's tight monetary policies are already priced into the market of cryptocurrencies. The market has already felt the agony of tightening. Therefore, it is likely that the recession will back down when circumstances ease, which will be what is finally factored in. According to Raoul Pal, the cryptocurrency markets have already priced in this entire event.
I'm a very visual person, so I distill everything into imagery. So, which is why macro so appealed to me, because macro is this massive 3D, always changing map of the world, of all the asset classes, how they're interrelated, the economies and the news flow. And I found I can hold it in my head. And I can kind of spin it around and look at it and take different component parts aside. And therefore, you can simplify it if you can make a picture of it. And so I just create that mental picture for others. Because most others struggle to see the connections, to see how this could be. People can think one step ahead, but people don't think 2 and 3. And 2 and 3 is where I'm pretty good at, which is longer term, knock-on effects, how this is going to play out. That doesn't mean I get all of them right, but I've been consistently pretty good at that over time. And I can explain it to people in a way that they understand it and can grasp it, whether they disagree or agree. I mean, again, that's the beautiful thing about Global Macro Investor. I've had people who barely ever agree with me, and they've been subscribers for 18 years.
The interest rates are already surged upwards by 75 basis points by Federal Reserves. This happened in the previous month. Raoul Pal believes that reducing yield and lowering commodity prices benefit risk-on assets. These assets include digital assets such as crypto. He believes that the low is close. Now, is it in or is it not? That's very hard to know.
So macro, Paul Tudor Jones told me a great thing was what makes a great investor in his mind is somebody whose idea horizon matches his trade time horizon. Right? A lot of people think, oh, the dollar's going up over the next 6 months or 2 years, and they trade in and out of it. Or the opposite is true, is they're short-term traders by nature because they have to be. You have this monthly P&L. And every position basically gets reset every month because your investors go, well, why did you screw up last month? They don't look at where you bought something and where you sold it in the industry. Unlike VC, in the hedge fund industry, it's where you were marked last month.
Yeah, it's mark to market.
So it's crazy. So what it means that everybody's time horizon is this 2 week to 2 month time horizon, yet your idea horizon, because it's macro, is in economic terms, which is 18 months or so. To go from peak economic cycle to trough recession, that's a 2.5 year thing. And it gets interesting to trading from macro for about an 18-month period, but you can't do it. So I'm like, this is useless. So I kind of defiantly left and decided to opt out of the rat race and move to Spain because quality of life was something that always mattered to me a lot. Because
you were in London? You were in London before? Okay.
Yeah. And I thought, what's the whole game for if it's not for quality of life? I mean, money's just an output, but the real thing that you're actually working your balls off for is quality of life. So I moved to Spain, and I realized that I'd had a lot of experience in macro versus most. and I had also learned how to write. I was writing at Goldman. We had this group chat that was very early group chat days, like an AOL group chat thing that I used to run for the whole firm and became very well known for it. So from the chairman down, everybody read my stuff. And then I wrote an article after a business trip to China when I was at the hedge fund called There's Something Wrong in Paradise, when I turned up to China to expect to see all this, all the amazing stories I was reading and getting from analysts, and turned up and there was just empty buildings after empty buildings. And I'm like,
you and Carson Block.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is a disaster.
But what he knows from all his hard work in economics is that there is a balance of possibilities which suggests that inflation is a past problem. Economic growth, according to him, is going to fall sharply. And when the economic growth falls, we'll have the Pavlovian instincts of the market, which say the Feds are going to pause and monetary conditions are going to ease, as per Raoul Pal's analysis.
I wrote a whole piece on this. This is the best instruction I can give. Firstly, I advise everybody, if you're trying to trade longer term, which is where I think the alpha is, the real outperformance is because everybody's time horizon is short, yours should be long. And I set up GMI to prove that, and I've proven it over 17 and a half years. I've got a registered, public track record for GMI members over 17 years that's basically proven that exact point. So here's my example. Oh yeah, so write it down. And every time you go and try and sell something or change your position, ask yourself, has something changed versus your thesis? So a lot of people, their thesis has changed, but they hold on to the position because they're emotionally attached. We've all done that. Or the other one is you get spooked out of something and you forget your thesis in the first place. And then then it goes back and you're like, shit, I've missed it.
The Real Vision founder says that markets take the path of most pain. And for ETH right now, that means upward. I think everybody's underweight the merge still. People will get into the merge or post-merge, will get this spike, and will probably get a pullback. A lot of people will say, see, it's going back to the low. My guess is it corrects sideways, does something, goes back to the range for a bit, and then we explode higher. So I'm very bullish right now. Short term, we're getting close to overbought, but I think we just had a correction, and my guess is we go again. What's fascinating is to see the forwards market and the futures market is everybody's hedging the ETH merge risk so that buying ETH and selling futures now, somebody's going to lift that hedge off at some point.
Because I've got a big picture framework that is robust and tested and is deep. I've done a lot of work on it. So I feel comfortable with the probabilities. Now, I love markets like anybody else. So I've got on my screen the real-time chart of ETH daily, weekly, monthly, and hourly. I don't even trade ETH. I just buy it. But I like the market and I look at the price action. And what I did the whole period was just didn't look at my P&L. So I have learned, and this is a new thing for me, how to disassociate myself with my P&L.
So, when did you first decide to invest in Bitcoin? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.